Just finished a beautiful conversation, always slipped, on Dance of Polarity with someone with a really, really unique experience. This person grew up as a daughter of a male sports coach and very much into football, American football, and baseball. And so it was very much, I don't want to say enmeshed, but very much in that world of men being men in sports environments. And said, if you've seen the film Remember the Titans, almost forgot it, but the Hayden Panettiere's character in that, where she's the daughter of the coach and she's very immersed in the world, and that was pretty much her experience, which for me I thought was really, really cool because I love that film. But it was also interesting to hear her experience of being a woman in that environment, at the same time having the I don't want to say inherited, but the ancestral maybe trauma from her mum and or from her mother's side of being mistreated by men. So a really interesting juxtaposition there of, oh, part of me believes that, or has been brought up to believe that men aren't safe, and at the same time I'm around all of these very protective men, how to deal with the two. And yeah, I found it really interesting conversation, not just because of that, but because she had done a lot of self-development work to be able to resolve a lot of those issues, and where she'd landed now, and kind of where we ended up with a takeaway of the word balance, and recognizing that yes, there has been this disparity between men and women, of men not being encouraged to embrace emotion or emotionality, and as a result not being able to express emotionality. Like she said, there's men aren't allowed to cry and have that experience, and so in not being allowed to do that, how can they, one, hold that emotion within themselves, but two, then be expected to, or manage to be able to hold that in a woman or in a counterpart, in a partner? And so I asked, well, how do we resolve that? Or if we're wanting men to feel allowed to embrace their emotions, because this is the difference between men and women, and masculine and feminine, one being an energetic and the other being, or the first being a gendered, the second being energetic, that the qualities of masculinity and femininity exist within all people, irrespective of whether you're male or female. And it's about how can you embrace the totality of the spectrum of masculinity and femininity, irrespective of whether you're male or female. And I asked, does inviting men to embrace and explore their emotionality, or the feminine qualities, take away from their masculinity? And she said no, because for a man to be able to own and express and hold his emotional state, there is strength in that, and that adds to their masculinity or their maleness, because of that strength. It doesn't take away from their ability to be a man. And I would agree. And, it speaks into to tantric teachings. And I did a whole Tantra Tuesday today all about this. That the masculine and feminine, they're not male and female qualities. They're just labels. And the masculine, Shiva, being about presence and awareness and consciousness, and the feminine Shakti being about the manifest reality, the play of the senses, of expression in the world. And it also said how, the Shiva element is the intrinsic or the instatic, and the Shakti element is the extrinsic or ecstatic. It's the difference between looking in and looking out, or inwardly focused and outwardly focused. And so we were saying, okay, well, how do we allow men, if we're encouraging men to embrace the totality of the human experience, which is to allow emotional expression, and not even just allow it, but to be able to fully hold that side of the coin for themselves, to then be able to be a safe space for women as well. How do we do that? It's by, well, if women are more adept at it because they've been encouraged and allowed to embrace emotionality, then there is the invitation for women to be the safe space for men to explore the emotionality. And I found it really interesting because it like this title suggests, it's the dance of polarity. If we're asking or inviting men to be in the emotional, then there's the opportunity for the women to hold that in a way that allows them to explore it in a way that is genuine and authentic to them. And a really interesting point that she made is that men and women work differently. Their brains work differently. And so her experience has been, well, I can't expect a man to think or show up or ask questions in the way that I expect women to. They're going to have their own way of doing that. And by dropping the expectation and just creating the space and holding them as they express or experience themselves in a way that is authentic to them, then we allow for the balance to be found. We allow for the gap to be bridged. Holding space in a balanced way allows for each person to access their full emotional range and strength. And yeah, from the tantric point of view, all emotions are valid. The emotions aren't good or bad. They're just part of the human experience. They're part of the human experience that is available to all people, irrespective of gender. And to have emotion is not an inherent female thing to do. Men are allowed to do that. So it's interesting that we've grown up, and her experience was that men aren't allowed to express themselves emotionally, or it's just not encouraged for whatever reason. I don't know why that is. It's unmanly to express emotion. Like, where did that come from? Where did that belief get ingrained or indoctrinated into us as a society? That for whatever reason, exhibiting emotion means you're unmanly. Maybe it's because maybe it is more inherently feminine, in the sense that it's it's expressive, and it's not as masculine in the sense that it's presence and strength and structure. I'm not sure. I'm musing out loud. I'd be curious to know your thoughts of where you believe that that's come from, or why that is, or why we conflate emotionality with femininity. It really gets into what do you mean by masculine and feminine. I spoke about this, the masculine being the idea of presence and structure and boundary and holding, and the feminine being the manifest and playfulness and chaotic and expressive. Maybe that's what it is. The feminine is the expressive, and the masculine is the container, right? In the teachings, in the tantric teachings, the masculine represents the transcendental, or Shiva represents the transcendental, and Shakti, female, feminine, represents the chaotic playfulness. It's the difference between. I kind of see it as like the masculine is the ground or the playground, and the feminine is what fills the playground. It's all of us playing. It's the jungle gym. It's all of that, and it's the expressiveness. Masculine being conscious and awareness, feminine being playfulness and expressiveness. So maybe that's where it comes in. But then there's that's where the disparity and the disservice comes in, is the conflation, that just because expressiveness and emotionality is feminine doesn't make it doesn't mean you're not allowed to embody it, express it, or it's not available to you as a male. I think that's the challenge. It's the re-education around the difference between man and woman, and masculine and feminine, male and female, masculine and feminine. One is gendered and one is energetic. And if we can create the distinction that if you are a male, you can exhibit and possess, you do, the qualities of masculine and feminine. And if you're a woman or female, you have the qualities of feminine and masculine. We can arrive at that sense of balance. And this is what this person was saying, is that the key for them is for both men and women to find balance within their own masculine and feminine energies. And this is just tantric teaching to a T. It's finding the balance between the two. Therein lies liberation. Therein lies the freedom. Therein lies the ability to fully embrace and enjoy the human experience. And it's difficult because one of the two is, in any moment, one of the two is predominantly experienced. And so finding the balance isn't like a true balance. It's kind of like a handstand. I like to relate pretty much everything I do back to handstands, because it's what I've been doing the last 10 years. You're never truly at a fixed point of balance. It's a constant refinement, interplay, a playing of the polarity. You're either one way or the other, and you're never truly, or you're very rarely in that fixed perfection of balance. You're just playing with, dancing between both sides as minimally as you can to give the illusion of stillness, of balance, and that's the game, if you will, of life. It's how good can you get at playing with the polarities, so that you can consciously reside wherever you want at whatever point you want. You can be all the way over here in extreme masculine, you can be all the way over here in extreme feminine, and you can choose anywhere along the spectrum and then dance around the equilibrium point at will. And that's the goal of the path. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's where we're at. Creating space. Women creating space, ironically adopting the masculine capacity to hold space for men to explore their emotionality in a way that feels safe for them to get there in their own. And last thing, really interesting thing she pointed to was that the the challenge for men has been that they're expected to know the answer. That's the burden of the men, just this expectation to know the answer. And the interesting, I think she said that the burden of women is they feel like they need to fill the space. And this is where, the switch came to. It's like, okay, women, it's maybe time now to not feel like you need to fill the space, but to just hold it. And for men to not need to know the answer, but to enjoy the exploration, the messiness of just figuring it out, and that there isn't an answer. It's very, very masculine thing of no, there is an answer. But there's not. There's an infinite, especially when there isn't a definitive answer. It all gets to be true. And how can we do that in a way that doesn't cause men to feel emasculated? Or I feel like that's the wrong word. Like, it shouldn't be feminine and masculine, but unman and unwoman. I don't know. It's the challenge of language, right? They point to something that can't be properly expressed with the words. They're just labels. They're pointing to things, but not a true representation. That gets way deeper into the tantra teaching, so I won't go there right now. But yeah, something to think about. I'm really grateful for this person in taking the time to share her experience. Really, really interesting, unique experience of her life from being a coach's daughter, and grateful for her trust and her honesty and her vulnerability. And if you're open to being part of this conversation, then I encourage you to just get in contact and reach out. Yeah, thank you.